For as churning cream produces butter, and as twisting the nose produces blood, so stirring up anger produces strife. Politicians stir people up. Politicians are all alike. Even as I write this, they are stirring up anger among the poor and the rich, blacks and the whites, Hispanics and blacks, and Occupy and business owners, to name a few. They know that stirred up people march and protest and vote. Sadly, politicians realize that an angry constituency, aided by a willing media, helps them hold on to their own power. This election cycle, as you consider your choices, pray. More than anything, we need informed and prayed-up voters. We need people who bring people together rather than divide them. And as always, look at what they've done and not what they say. Introduction to Proverb 31. The sayings of King Lemuel, an inspired utterance his mother taught him. Though we do not know much about King Lemuel or his mother, we do know he wrote the most famous chapter, to English speakers, in the book of Proverbs. Entire ministries are centered around this book of the Bible because it gives sound and wise instruction for women. It's a powerful book and should be read often. And it's not just for women. Men can gain great insight into the ideal Proverbs 31 woman. So, for the next month, join with me in reading the entire book every day so that you may have context into each verse written. God will bless you for this. I have included the rest of the book below. Listen, my son. Listen, son of my womb. Listen, my son, the answer to my prayers. Do not spend your strength on women, your vigor on those who ruin kings. It is not for kings, Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, not for rulers to crave beer, lest they drink and forget what has been decreed, and deprive all the oppressed of their rights. Let beer be for those who are perishing, wine for those who are in anguish. Let them drink and forget their poverty and remember their misery no more. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly, defend the rights of the poor and needy. Epilogue: the wife of noble character. A wife of noble character who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. She is like the merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it is still night. She provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her tasks. She sees that her trading is profitable, and her lamp does not go out at night. In her hand she holds the distaff and grasps the spindle with her fingers. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. She makes coverings for her bed. She is clothed in fine linen and purple. Her husband is respected at the city gate, where he takes his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies the merchants with sashes. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive, and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate. Loose living. Listen, my son. Listen, son of my womb. Listen, my son, the answer to my prayers. Do not spend your strength on women, your vigor on those who ruin kings. The irony of these two verses on the heels of what is to come is stunning. What we'll read below, though, is merely a compliment to these verses. And this is coming from the king's mother. What the writer is clearly saying is that loose living with women can cause you all sorts of problems. I dare say there is little disagreement among those reading this post. We've seen it and may have experienced it. Look at many kings and rulers through the ages. Loose living ruined them. Look at our leaders at the state and federal levels. I'm still shocked at the lewd behavior of some of our top leaders. Their marriages are ruined, their careers destroyed, and their legacy is crushed. Why? Because they enjoyed the pleasures of sin for a season. Hebrews 11 verse 25. Pray for the leaders of your country. I've spoken about this elsewhere, but we're in for some dark moral and financial times in the near future. Pray that God would move on with their lives. Temptations abound. It is not for kings, Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, not for rulers to crave beer, lest they drink and forget what has been decreed, and deprive all the oppressed of their rights. From these verses, and others, we see that rulers have a responsibility to the oppressed. Strong drinks and drugs distort the power the leaders think they have. Another addition is the power they have. It must be, or why would men and women regularly spend millions of their own money, and ours, for a job that pays a pittance in comparison to their wealth? It has to be power and the ability to spend lots of money not their own. Of course, they may go in with the noblest of intentions, but money and power corrupt even the best. Again, pray for your politicians. They constantly need encouragement from the Lord Himself to do the right thing. The temptations at the top to abuse their authority and waste other people's money freely are great. Dulling the pain, let beer be for those who are perishing, wine for those who are in anguish. When this was written, wine was given to the dying as a sedative or a pain killer. Recall the wine vinegar was lifted up to Jesus while He was on the cross, though He refused it. It was customary to give the dying wine to dull the pain. We've certainly taken alcohol drinking to an entirely new level. And for many, they still use it as a sedative and pain killer. As these scriptures point out, the alcohol drowns away the misery of their existence. They can drink and drink and drink and never really be cured of that which ails them. I suspect that someone you know has a problem with alcohol. It's a nasty and debilitating addiction. Pray that God will move in that person's life. Pray that God will continue to draw that person to Christ. Those who cannot speak for themselves, many of you reading this will have the same thoughts I do about this topic. One issue stands head and shoulders above all others when it comes to being able to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves: abortion. I don't think we can fight hard enough for this issue, as there are many of our opponents fighting night and day to keep Roe versus Wade the law of the land. I have said in the past that our stance on this issue alone will be our undoing as a nation. An entire generation of children have been aborted. I know many of you pray for the unborn and their mothers. This is a spiritual issue if there ever was one. We know it's been a blot on nations since Moses was born. Pray for the women who go into Planned Parenthood clinics nearest you. Pray that the abortion industry will go away because women begin to see the light. Opportunities abound. Speak up and judge fairly, defend the rights of the poor and needy. How often do we associate with the poor and needy? In the West, we enjoy a fairly large middle class. Those of us who have risen out of poverty forget what it was like to be poor. We may even be content with the government taking care of the poor because, well, we don't associate with the poor. All throughout scriptures, it gently reminds us that the poor, the needy, the aliens, and the widows are all groups of people we should be taking care of. Whether it's defending their rights when the time comes or just being there when they need us, we should be helping them. Today or tomorrow there will probably be an opportunity to lend a hand to help out. Don't let the opportunity slip through your fingers. Of noble character. A word of caution: I fear that many women reading this part of the chapter will occasionally feel like failures because they don't live up to this ideal woman/wife/mother/businesswoman all day, every day. Who actually could? Think of the words described herein more like a target, something that you aim for and hit all the time, just not a bullseye every single time. The writer sets a very high but reachable standard for all women. He doesn't mince words, but he hits many great characteristics of the ideal woman. Now, gentlemen, before you sit these verses out, you need to know that as husbands your role is vital to your mate. You are to comfort and encourage and praise when necessary, but never should you accuse your mate of not meeting one of the characteristics. Those types of comments violate the "love your wife and do not be harsh with her" principle, Colossians 3 verse 19. If she's read this passage at least one time, she knows the standard well. She doesn't need you to push. These next few days I encourage you to pray through the verses one by one. Meditate on each truth and ask the Lord to help you use the principle of the verse to His glory.